welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria, where once again we're back for the Championship Penitentiary. Despite a stormy weekend, we do have a full card of fixtures, and joining me we have Enzo. How are you, Enzo?
I'm good, yeah. I'm still a wee bit bored from our game on Saturday, if I'm honest with you. But I suppose we'll get into a wee bit more detail later on. Other than that, fine, yeah.
And Kieran, how are you doing?
Aye, absolutely fine. Delighted to be back on. Stormy making me keep me away from Firhill. Another weekend of bog standard championship football, you know what I mean? Absolutely fantastic. But I can't wait to come on and talk about this weekend's results with you and Enzo.
Aye, and we start off with Ross County against Rafe. And as Kieran, as you have mentioned, Storm Amy couldn't keep you away from your game. Storm Amy very much kept me and many Rovers fans away because there was a pre on the line of Pitlock race. So, it's like all week I was just sat there buzzing. It's like I got my train tickets on the Monday. They were 40 quid for the return. And I was like, yes, this is perfect. I'm going to go to the Mallard. I'm going to get a Wimpy Burger. Staggy pies, all that. It's all waiting for me on the Saturday, and then it's like wake up Saturday, and it's just not happening. It's gutting, but with the way things turned out, maybe it was a blessing I didn't go. But yeah, so Ross County, they're going into this game, they were still looking for their first win. Meanwhile, Reef were comfortable winners against Arbroath last week. First half, there's not really a lot to talk about, I'll be honest. It's like you can tell the weather was definitely having its effect on this one, being up in the Highlands. It's always worse up there, so yeah, it did not look fun to be in. Did not look fun to play football in. But second half, probably Rafe were probably the better team judging from the highlights. In that second half, where there was definitely like this period where it was pretty much as Rafe camped in the Ross County box, but it would be just this weird stramash that led to Miller Thompson getting County their opener in the 73rd minute, and then after that point there was two efforts from Rafe that were effectively cleared up. One cleared off the line, and one where it's like it had beaten the goalkeeper, but there was a defender in the way. But with pressing so high up to try and get an equaliser, Roden Hill just got the ball, just ran through right at the end and made it 2-0. That gave County their first win of the season, which I did say was coming, and I'd had a very good feeling it was going to come against us because it's a Reef thing.
It just felt right.
We did this with Edry last season. But
Yeah,
I'm not surprised about it. It's like
I think the big question for me, I suppose, after that is this a genuine turning point for County? Obviously, Miller Thompson, who they just signed last week, was that his first appearance for them? It would have been, wouldn't it? Because they only signed him. Yeah, they only
I
signed
was
him on
just
the
about
loan
to say,
deadline.
I think this is the turning point for County, seeing as he signed three players from Premiership clubs on loan in the lead up to this game. It's like they now have, I think, 29 players at the club, as I think I also mentioned last week's podcast. But yeah, it's like they've strengthened throughout September. It's like Tony Doherty. I've got players that suit his style and more. So I see this as County. It's like they're not going to win the league. The gap to St Johnstone even after these results is just way too much. So we won't be seeing them challenging for the title, but in the playoffs race, we'll see in a couple of weeks how that goes. Rafe, meanwhile, again, this isn't one. It's one where we didn't play badly again, but we just lack that finish. We just lack that clinical instinct that a lot of other teams have. Like Enzo, yourself, you guys have got Josh Fowler, who's one of the top goal scorers in the league. St Johnstone have got Josh McPake. We have Dylan Easton, who's not a striker, and like half of his goals come from penalties. So it is a concern, but I think just with the way the season has started, so it's like Jack Hamilton was coming back from injury. Callum Smith, he actually was in the squad. He's not played since the 1st of November last year. He's been out for nearly 11 months. No, it will be 11 months actually. 11 months without playing. Lewis Vaughan had a very good pre-season in the League Cup, but again, he got a knock at some point, so he'll still be getting back up to speed. So it's not one that I'm too worried about, but it is something. It's like if we did have that clinicalness, then there's a lot of results that would have changed. It's like I think I had 2 draws against Queens Park and Airdrie. I feel like we're definitely on top when it came to chances created, having plenty of opportunities, but just not having someone to finish them. So that's a potential 4 points that we've missed out on a minimum. But yeah, it's just one of those. I'm not too fussed.
I think we will see County finish in the top 4. I know that they've started the season really poorly, and I know that their fans were frustrated, and ultimately Tony Docherty is still working with the bulk of a squad that he didn't put together. He's been able to make some additions recently, but I just think there's two. I know that there's the whole argument about whether they've actually signed players to play a system or whether they've just signed a bunch of names. But for me, there's just too much ability in that squad for them not to make a charge at least. Ultimately, you're just talking about essentially the top half of the table and you're in rush out of the top 4. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of football still to be played. I'll be surprised if we don't see them in the top 4 come sort of March, April.
Definitely. And as you two guys were saying, I think they were looking for that one to kind of spur things into life for them, and obviously they've got that one. Obviously they're wished it to come sooner than start of October, but and as you say, in this like couple of wins, and you're right back in amongst it. You're in amongst the playoffs, or you're even in with a shout at maybe a title race perhaps, but a couple of losses and you're right back down there and you're in a bit of a dogfight. So it's the nature of the beast of this league, But I certainly, for your county fans' point of view, you'd certainly hope to think that it would be the start of them kind of kicking on now and making a charge for the playoffs.
Callum, see, just out of curiosity, from your perspective, I don't know how you feel about this, but from an outside point of view, I feel just looking at the business that Wraith have done over the summer, I'm not saying it's been bad or anything like that, but I'm not convinced that they have significantly improved their squad or improved it at all based on where you guys were at the tail end of last season. How do you feel about that, generally speaking?
I feel like there has been slight improvement on the squad, but the thing is, a lot of the players that we've brought in has definitely been not first team starters. It's just been a lot of depth that we've brought in because that's been an issue with us for years at this point, where we've always had, like a pretty good starting 11, like a starting 11 that will definitely be around about like the sort of playoff picture. But then it's like you look at the bench, and there would be times, even last season, I think there was points where we were naming 4 players on the bench, which not ideal. So I do get your point about it's like this first 11 hasn't improved, but the squad has. Like
Yeah,
we've got a greater strength and depth than what we have had in previous seasons.
Okay. Yeah,
but I wouldn't mind having a look in January because it's like we haven't. It's like the players we've got on loan. Josh Gentles, I think he's part of the cooperation agreement. He came on. Trying to think, he came on against our Broth at the end, and he came on in this one as well and had a good chance to score. I think he was one who tested the goalkeeper. Ewan Wilson has started the last few games. But again, he's second choice behind Lewis Stevenson. Paul Enzio, I don't think has made an appearance yet. Neither has. Who's a boy we got from York? Darryl O'Connor, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He's not made an appearance yet either. So again, we've got space in the loan market. So I reckon, depending on how it is in January, we might see a couple of players, depending on the position. Like we're still sat third, which I'm very happy with, especially when you consider the start that we had last season, where I think at this point, 9 games in, I think we only had 8 points, which it's like right now would have us down with yourselves, Enzo, in 8th, 7th. It's like we were in that sort of territory, whereas now we're in, we're up in third, we're looking comfortably like a playoff side for the most part. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of improvements. Again, I'll be interested to see how Callum Smith kicks on in the next few months. I think he only has a deal until January because it was a case of his original contract was up in the summer, but as mentioned, he got injured back last November, and Barry Robson obviously never got a chance to see him, so it's a case of we'll keep him in, he'll be fit soon enough, and then we'll see how it goes. So I think I've got no worries. I've got no worries, but it's like it could always be that little bit better.
I think you're very optimistic as well, to be fair.
I'm weirdly optimistic as usual when it comes to Reef. I don't know why. Delusion, that's what it is. It's just pure delusion.
I respect the honesty.
Look, I've had to deal with us finishing third in League One.
Mate, I've seen us finish bottom of League Two twice. Don't give me that.
But anyway, moving on, we have Airdrie against Morton. Unfortunately, we don't have Aiden to talk us through this, but honestly, considering the highlights for this game, pretty good job because there's not been a lot to write home about. Going into this one, Airdrie were sat bottom and continue to, whereas Morton were doing their usual tricks and came off another draw, although as Aidan very rightly pointed out last week, they really should have won that one. But yeah, it's like the first half, there was very little. There was not a lot to talk about in that first half. But second half, Morton would get an opener pretty quickly. Adaloy would get onto the end of a cross, it hits the post and it hits off the back of the Airdrie goalkeeper, Matthew Connolly. So it's good that it's like first time watching the highlights, I didn't quite catch the ball hitting the post and then hitting off the goal and going in because I was like, okay, it's like Morton TV doesn't have any of like the graphics, and so it's like I went on to Google to see who the goal scorer was, and it said Matthew Connolly. And it's just like, no, that looked like it was Adelaide. I watched it a couple more times to see, it hit the post and then hit the goalkeeper. So pretty unlucky for Airdrie that, but it's just how it goes. But I suppose they got lucky then 5 minutes later, if that, because Morton doing their tiki-taka at the back, the goalkeeper just passes it to a marked man. Airdrie get the ball back. It's played through to Ewan Henderson, who just slots it home. But with about 10 minutes to go, less than 10 minutes to go, Ewan Henderson would head home from a corner. Not Ewan Henderson, no, Jackson Longridge. Ewan Henderson plays for Airdrie. Longridge heads home from a corner for Morton, and that gives them all 3 points. No, it's like that's. But yeah, it's like the second win of the season for them. They've moved up the table again. They're back in their usual position of sixth. They are back to having 0 goal difference.
It's their first win of the season, isn't it?
No, it's a second.
I'm getting mixed up.
Oh my god, no, it is their first. It is their first
win of the season.
I was really confused what
they had drawn every game barring one. Yeah. So they had drawn every game barring one, which they are eventually until Saturday. So they'll obviously be delighted to get that monkey off their back. And I think Morton for me this year, they're quite a different team compared to what they have been the past couple of years. But one thing that they do have is they actually do have a wee bit of depth, and I think that's something that they have significantly lacked over the past few years. They've got a fairly healthy bench sitting there, which is obviously a massive factor at this level. And they have some players who are more than capable of being really big contributors in the Championship. Really curious to see how their season goes. It could still go one way or another. I think there's a really overwhelmingly likelihood that they will probably finish around about 6th or 7th or something like that. And I think they would probably be happy with that realistically and give them something to build on for next year. But yeah, they'll be just delighted to finally get a win. I have to say, watching the highlights, Jackson Longridge, I think, has been pretty good for them so far this season. I think he scored maybe even 3 goals already, which isn't bad for a player that you don't necessarily bring in to get goals for you. I think the goalie could have done a wee bit better for that one. I don't know if I'd necessarily put all the blame on him, but I feel as though he probably could have done a wee bit better. But that just kind of sums up where Airdrie are. Just nothing's going right for them. Contrary to Morton, who, as I say, they've got quite a bit of depth in most areas of the park, Airdrie's squad is so imbalanced. And then they've got about 1 million midfielders, still don't have any strikers. They signed this cooperation agreement with Dundee United last week. I think the intention was to bring in Owen Sturton on loan, who did really well for Montrose in the second half of last season. And now he's out. They didn't obviously agree to bring him in because he picked up an injury. He's now out until about Christmas time at least. They picked up 3 other guys for them, I believe, and all 3 of them were on the United's bench instead of playing for Airdrie on Saturday. So that is just a wee bit wild. And they're stuck with a manager that I think their fans are already fed up with Danny Lennon already as well. So it's just not a good situation to be in. And I cannot see this season ending well for them.
Yeah, it's
I
just
know, definitely. Echo what you said. I think we kind of said the same thing last week as well. On last week's episode, me and Callum are kind of worried for Airdrie a bit. They've not replaced Ben Wilson. They've not replaced him. They're going to properly struggle, I think. Whether they go down, whether they go straight down or not, I don't know. But it's not looking good for them at the moment. I think they've always, whenever we've played them, they always make it tough for us. I think they actually look fairly decent whenever they play us. But I just something's no clicking at the moment. And obviously losing McCabe as well, big loss. And I don't think Lennon's really a good replacement. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think he is a decent manager, but maybe maybe 5, 6 years ago, you could say that, not the year of our Lord 2025. So, but I mean, I thought Airdrie did look not bad in the first half. Really, I thought they played some decent stuff, but again, they just defensively they look so suspect. Airdrie, and it was the same story as last season. They couldn't stop conceding, and again, I don't think they've improved on that at all. That side of them at all. They're just conceding goals like nobody's business, and when you're down the bottom of the league, you're just going to get you're not going to get that Robbery Green. You're going to get goals like that constantly. Goals that you're conceding like that, and but it's not looking good at all for Airdrie. Desperately worrying times on them.
I saw some rumours that have kind of popped up over the past few days that Danny Lennon might actually only be on a monthly rolling contract with Airdrie, which wouldn't exactly be the biggest. Yeah, exactly. The biggest leap
Yeah.
of faith or show of confidence in giving him
a
the job, if that really is
rolling contract in the
yeah,
Championship.
that seems to be the suggestion among the Airdrie fan base over the past few days. Yeah. Now, again, I don't know how much truth there is to that, but if that's the case, it just goes to show that they weren't overly convinced by the appointment, and I can understand why. He'd been out of a job for a few years, and he primarily managed at a lower level than this. So yeah, I mean, regardless of the status of his contract, I'm not entirely convinced he's going to get the full year to see it out unless he starts to turn things around.
Yeah.
And you
I
can
know it's
watch
like
his interviews.
a rolling contract at this level. You're both. It's like at that point you're basically a glorified interim manager.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is, as I say, Airdrie obviously. I suspect the reason they ended up going for him was that ultimately they maybe didn't get the candidates putting themselves forward for it that they were expecting. And then from Danny Lennon's perspective, he hadn't managed in about 3 years, and that was in League Two. So I guess it potentially works for both parties. Maybe it works out and you get a. I don't know, and I don't even know if there's any truth to this, to be fair. But this seems to be it's a rumor that I've seen pop up a couple of times.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, and I heard there was supposedly a while ago some sort of, it's like they're not flushing cash, edgy, I think. So if it is a case of a monthly contract, then it's easiest to get rid of someone. You don't have to have a big, long payout. Unlike a certain other club has had to do this week. But moving on. Speaking of Morton, it's like their first win. That's going to be a real monkey off their back. It's like they've been very close to getting that first win in quite a few games this season. Have been quite unlucky. It's like as mentioned, the goal that was wrongly chalked off against Ross County. There's been other opportunities.
What
But
about the one against
yeah,
Booth?
that one was rightfully chalked off just for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. To be fair, it was like it was ultimately the right outcome, but the justification for it wasn't quite
The ends justify the
correct.
means, all that Machiavellian stuff.
Potentially.
But even then, the penalty we got at Hill, we drew with them. I think it was the second game of the season. Very suspect. I'm not going to lie. It was I don't think it was a penalty in a million years. And other than that, if we don't get that penalty, I think Morton go on and beat us at Hill that day. We did not look like scoring at all. So Morton have definitely, I felt, they've been very unlucky with some of the decisions they've got against them, and ultimately it's led to them, being I think England said they've lost like 5 points or something off the back of wrong
It was
decisions.
25 points. In
Yeah,
reality, it's 4 because
aye.
the race one doesn't count.
Aye, but again, that's the difference between not so much staying in the league or whatever, but that's the difference between finishing mid-table as Morton normally do, and at least making a charge for the playoffs. So Morton fans will have a right to feel aggrieved about that, but no, certainly they'll be happy to get their first one, absolutely, and who knows? I mean, I hope they don't push on, but you'd like to think from a that Morton fans' point of view that they do kick on and try and at least make a push for the playoffs.
It's like if you were to add those 4 points, it's like they'd be tied with Rafe in third, and it's like that. That's the difference really, because it's like last week they were way down. They were down in seventh, I think, which it just shows the difference. Granted it is early in the season, but it's like the gap between Rafe and Park at the end of last season was only a single point. It's
Mhm.
like these at the end of the season, it's like 4 points it makes a massive difference. But it's like moving on, we go to Thistle against Arbroath. Two sides sat in the playoff places. Thistle on a good run of form, as mentioned last week, and Arbroath looking to recover from their trip to Starks Park where they got beat 3-0. So, Kieran, you eventually made it to
Yeah.
this game.
Aye. I managed to get there. It wasn't looking so good at the start. Obviously, all the trains from Ballock were all cancelled. I think there was a tree on the bowling line. So, and I think, no, I think there was a tree at the drum chapel line, and there was flooding at the bowling line. So there was just no way at all for me to get to Partick to get a subway into Maryhill. So it was looking bleak. But my friend's dad came through. And picked us up and took us to the game. So that was really good. Managed to get there, and I get into the game. I think we had every right to back us getting the 3 points, but I mean it's the most Thistle thing to go on and have this run of form. I think it was like 5 wins on the bounce heading into Saturday, and we're taking that game at a time, but you're obviously, as well as that, you're looking ahead, going, well, if we pick points, if we pick wins up here and pick another win up here, and we, with a stroke of luck, who knows where we can end up, So obviously on Saturday we look to make it 6 wins on a bounce, and it couldn't have started any better for us. On the 5th minute, again, another early goal for Thistle. Chalmers curled a lovely, lovely goal into the top left-hand corner. It was some lovely interlinked play between Fitzpatrick and Watt, and I think Ocean Smith was involved in it as well. and Fitzpatrick then just slid the ball over to Chalmers, who finished the move off greatly. That's him now on 7 goals this season, and I think he's already matched his total for last season already this season. So he's really good, and I think every week he gets better and better. He looks really good, you know. Um, and then we nearly made it 2-0. Paddy Redden nearly made it 2-0 with a shot from just about 25 yards out, but it was saved by our Grove keeper, McAdams. And pretty much first half, I think it was all Thistle. Again, Arbroath, I think they had a couple of half chances, but they were either dragged wide or whatever over the bar. You know, didn't really threaten much. But I think just at the end of the first half, you know, we did fall a bit flat. You know, from there, like the first 20, 30 minutes of pressure that we did have on Arbroath, you know, it did fall a bit flat towards the end of the first half, heading into half time. So for the second half, we just I was hoping get another goal, and you know, I think that would pretty much kill it off. But again, we've done absolutely nothing really from the second, like from the start of the second half. We just looked quite flat, you know, and then the 61st minute, Arbroath got the equaliser, and I don't know if you've seen it, but Josh Clark comes out to claim the ball, but he kind of fumbles it in the box, and he collides with an Arbroath player, and Finlay Marshall's there to just slot the ball home, you know. And I don't want to criticise Clark too much. I think in recent weeks he's shown that he's pretty confident, and you know, he seems pretty assured in between the sticks. But that is basic. Like, being brutally honest here, that is basic stuff you expect your keeper to be dealing with. But again, I don't want to, you know, criticise him or slag him off too much. You know, I think he's actually looked fairly decent. But again, you know, if that's a sign of things for things to come, you know, it's not looking good. But it's one of the ones, you know. After the equaliser, both McAdams and Clark were forced into pretty decent saves. I think Fitzpatrick had a chance, and Turner had a chance just after Arbroath equalised as well. And I think McAdams looked pretty good. I think he made a good couple of saves for Arbroath, but so did Clark as well. He was especially after conceding a goal at that. He made a good save. I think I don't know who it came from, who the header came from, but a cross came in. I think it was for a free kick, and it was a header for Arbroath, and Josh Clark got down to well to save it, and I think Arbroath had a distance had a shot for like 20, 25 yards out as well, and again Clark saved it pretty comfortably. And but full time went, and I felt a bit frustrated, you know, especially after hearing about the results from Wraith, and we're going to talk about the St Johnstone game in that as well. But it's a massive chance going to Begging to kind of close the gap on St Johnstone, and obviously Wraith losing as well, you know, get a bit of an advantage on that as well. But it could have been a lot worse, I felt, you know. It could have been we could have lost, and that was us, you know, right on. I don't think it would have been the worst thing to happen if we did lose, mind you, considering Wraith and that did lose as well. But I think a draw it's not the end of the world, but it certainly could have been a lot more. But I really, looking at the bigger picture as well, that's only what 2 draws and a loss. We've obviously went on a decent bit of run as well, decent bit of run too, so it's not that bad, but it could have been a lot better on Saturday.
It's as if you read my notes, because I do have here, was this a missed opportunity for Thistle, considering the other results. But you very much covered that. It definitely is like going into this, you wouldn't have expected these results. So, like I say, could have been worse, could have been better. But Arbroath, you know, it's another good point for them. We've finished the first quarter with 9 games in. They've got 3 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses. So, it's looking very good for them. Any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I suppose is I thought it was a cracking goal. The Thistle goal was a fantastic finish. It was really, really one of those really kind of satisfying finishes to
Yeah.
watch. Like when that leaves his boot and you realise it's about to hit the back of the net. It's just a really kind of pretty goal. Um, and I agree with your kind of overview that, or your assessment that it is points dropped for Thistle. Obviously, Arbroath have had a solid start to the season. Although I do think, is it maybe worth highlighting that they haven't actually won since in about a month or something like that, I think it is. Because they won, they beat us, they beat Airdrie, they beat us in Airdrie in August, and they beat County at the start of September, I believe. And I think since then they've had a
See,
couple
the one results,
of
draw against Thistle, lost to us, draw against Morton, lost to Dunfermline. It's like, I'm up to the day of recording, 6th of September is when they last won. That was away up at Ross County.
yeah, yeah.
In that
I'm
time,
not criticising.
they scored twice and conceded 10.
And it's not, to be fair, they conceded 5 in the one game at Dunfermline, so that's
Aye.
obviously going to put a significant dent in that. And I don't mean to be critical of Arbroath, because I can assure you, if you'd asked any Arbroath fan, how would you feel with 12 points after the first quarter, they would all have said, absolutely, I'll bite your hand off for it. But I kind of, and this is going to come back to bite me in the arse because we play them next week, but I do kind of think that they're on a minor slide. And I do think come the end of the season, they'll certainly be closer to 8th than they will 4th. And I think most reasonable Arbroath fans would probably admit that. That's not me being critical of them. It's just the realistic scenario of a part-time team who have got a wee bit of kind of spring in their step from promotion, but over the course of a season surrounded by full-time clubs where you need to have that kind of consistency and longevity and fitness, they might slide away a wee bit. I think they'll be fine, by the way, come the end of the season, but I don't think they're going to stay in 4th place for all that much longer, if I'm being honest,
Oh,
especially
absolutely,
in
yeah.
the Morton are kind of playing quite well, and County won't be too far away relatively soon as well. So, but regardless, great result for them. Absolutely delighted, and I'm sure
Absolutely.
their fans were fearing the worst after conceded so early on in the game.
It's
Aye,
like,
definitely.
absolutely.
I think you're spot on there, Enzo. I think I was more thought about how shite a result it was for Thistle more than anything, but glossed over the fact that it's a really good point away, especially away from home as well. You know,
Yeah.
coming over their point, I think our Arbroath fans would have bit their hand off, especially after us taking the lead so early. You know, once again. So aye, no, it was a really good result. Your head obviously making his return to Firhill as well, so that was good. Seeing that. But I other than that, I know. I think they will kind of start to we'll start to see a bit of decline in our growth. But listen, I think they've been here before, and when they first came back up, I think it was the 2019 2020 season, and when they first came back up, and they actually done fairly well. I think they were pretty close on getting the playoffs that season. So from my recollection, I don't really want to remember the 2019-20 season, to be honest. But I don't know. Well, obviously, again, this league is weird and wonderful at the same time. You know that it can we can Arbroath can go on a mad run of losing 3 or 4 games in a row, and they're looking at relegation candidates, or they can win a couple and they're right back up there. So
And this
aye,
is
sorry Enzo.
this. I was just going to say, and this is why I know that it's difficult not to, right? Because you come out every
Oh,
game, you've won, lost, you draw, and you look at the league table and you go, "Oh, we've gained a place, or we've moved down a
Yeah.
wee place." But I personally don't think it's worth focusing too much on the league table a quarter of the way into the season. I know the players
yeah,
will be looking at it and whatever else, and it's as I say, it's difficult not to. It's all part of the buzz of
yeah,
being a football fan. But I just think even St Johnstone, who I think the majority of people would agree are probably still overwhelming favourites to win the division, certainly not it's not guaranteed yet, and it won't be for a good while yet.
definitely.
And I think you come back in 4 or 5 months' time, that league table might look very, very different all over.
It's like at this point, it's like we're 9 games in and they're sitting 9 points clear of Airdrie, who are bottom. So as mentioned, it's like if you're a Caesar Arbro fans, it's like end of the first quarter, you're going to be 9 points clear of whoever's bottom. They're going to be like, oh, that's an excellent start.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's like it's like there's no expectations for them to finish in the playoffs, and it's like they're not going to finish in the playoffs. And it's like with Ayr seemingly on a resurgence in Ross County, getting their first win and having like a lot of players who have come down from the Premiership with them and also from other clubs, it's like they're going to be in that mix as well. And it's like if one team that's currently starting the playoffs is going to drop out, it's definitely going to be Arbroath. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. Put it this way: I don't think any Arbroath fan, despite this start that they've had, would turn down guaranteed 8th place right now.
no, that's pretty much like as I said before. It's like pre-season. I predicted them to finish bottom, but it's like with the way things are going, they're looking likely to stay up, and that's all I can ask for as the one part-time team in this league.
Yep.
But as I did mention about Ayr being on the up again, they were away to St Johnstone. They were away to St Johnstone at the weekend. St Johnstone, they were looking to continue their good start. Meanwhile, Ayr back-to-back wins for them, beating Dunfermline and someone else. Of course, I remember them beating Dunfermline. But this one was not a good game. This really wasn't. There was not much between the two sides. Well, stats-wise, there wasn't much between the two sides, but it was a case of loads of half chances for St Johnstone, a couple of half chances for Ayr. But it's like the only talking point from this game has got to be the referee because of that one call that was made in the second half. I'd imagine we've all seen it, but for people listening or watching who haven't, the ball's in the air in the box. It's like the keeper's made a save. The ball's up in the air. It's going away from the goal. And Josh McPeak, he's waiting for the ball to drop, and it's like he stances up to stand his ground, waiting on someone to it's like it's probably going to be a defender that's going to try and challenge him for the ball. It was not a defender who challenged him for the ball. It was David Mitchell who just came flying over the top of him, and it's like he doesn't get the he gets the ball, but only when he's like on top of McPeak, and McPeak's halfway down onto the ground, and it's like Mitchell lands on him, and it's just chaos, and you're just like you're watching that. If you haven't seen the decision, and you hear that description, and you watch what happens, you're thinking to yourself, that is a St Johnstone penalty, free kick for Ayr. Let me tell you. We knew about this when it happened because Cal was not happy. He was really, really not happy about this one. Aside from that, there was Toby Stewart making a good save at the end. But I just want to ask your thoughts on the incident. Is it a penalty or was it the right decision to give a free kick there?
That is definitely a penalty. Like I don't know how you can argue it wasn't. I mean, even watching the highlights, I watched Saints TV, the highlights, their coverage of it, and they were quite rightly incensed that it wasn't a penalty. Like I don't know, it's mad. I don't know if Enzo's get a different opinion, but aye.
No, I've only seen it back once, and I think
Uh-huh.
it's just one of these. I don't know what the referee's seen. I think he's somehow imagined that maybe McPeak backed into Mitchell or something like that, because you know what it's like keepers are given so much, they're afforded so much protection these days
Aye.
that generally speaking, you're like when it's a 50-50 in that scenario, it's always going to be given in the keeper's favour. But he's essentially taken him out, hasn't he? So it's difficult to argue, I would say.
It's like as someone who is part of the goalkeeping union, it's like you would think I would defend. I tend to give a bit more leniency to goalkeepers. No, not this one. It's just pure and simple, just going through him.
Yeah.
It's like just no. It's like if they were stood next to each other and it happened, then Okay, yeah, fair enough, because it would have been a case of the boy back into him. But Mitchell's just come running in and just launched himself into McPeak.
Aye, right,
Like,
you're the
no,
tapping one. Aye.
there's a clear
That's
difference there.
I think I know obviously the game finished nothing each in the end, but I actually thought it seemed quite an intriguing match from the highlights because obviously St Johnstone did have a few wee half chances here and there, but I think Ayr had a game plan which was to go there and make it difficult for them and be quite stuffy and defend well. And by all accounts, it, it essentially worked for them. I don't know if they were happy.
mhm,
They would have, I suspect they would have been happy with a draw beforehand, and ultimately they got it. And I actually think at the end of the day, the St Johnstone keeper probably had more to do than the Ayr keeper. So
Mm.
um, I don't know. I think both teams were probably coming away from that going could have been better, could probably have been a lot worse as well. And ultimately, it does air the favour of keeping them on. They're back on track now, as you say, Callum. They've
mhm,
won a few games and they didn't go to St Johnstone and lose, which is the main thing. St Johnstone, I feel as though their fans are getting to the stage where there's a small amount of concern that there's been a bit of a dip in the standard of their performances, but at least they didn't lose, and at least they still have a small cushion at the top of the table. And I think they will bounce back. I know that they don't have. Um, I think they've got some injuries at the minute, strikers out and stuff like that. But I think they'll be absolutely fine and they'll be back. They'll be back where they want to be within the next week or two.
I was just going to say, it's like when you look at the stats, it was only 5 shots from St Johnson supposedly,
Yeah,
and only one of them was on target compared to Ayer's 4-2. But with St Johnson, Carol and a couple of other St Johnson fans have had some concerns about performances these last few weeks,
yeah,
and I have seen that concern for a reason. Because it's like I said when they beat us that they did not play well, but they just had that quality difference, and I feel like it's something that the players themselves know,
yeah,
and they've just got a bit complacent.
yeah. And I don't want to. I don't want to say they didn't deserve to beat us when we played them, but obviously when you're playing against a side that you're overwhelming favourites for, and you need a sort of 89th, 90th minute winner, then there's still yes, you picked up the 3 points, but you're probably questioning certain aspects of how that happened as well. Ultimately, so yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's very very rare that anybody wins this league without at some point going in a reasonably poor run of form. It's nobody usually. It's been a while since somebody's totally run away with this division. I would say. I think that's fair to say. So I think there was that expectation based on how the campaign started that St Johnstone might be that team this year, but maybe they're not going to have it quite as straightforward as they might have been hoping.
Kieran, your thoughts on St Johnson these past few weeks?
I think I'm just going to echo what both of you have said. Obviously, there has been concerns kind of raised about their dipping performances, and as of recent weeks, and me and Callum have obviously, I think it was after the when St Johnstone made the made the trip to Start Spark, sorry, that um, they've got that quality about them. You know, that they've got that quality upon the sheet, even when they're not at their best, they're not firing on all cylinders. You know, and I you know, that might have been that might have been the case a couple of weeks ago, but maybe teams are starting to find it out a wee bit, and starting to, frustrate them and that, and maybe St Johnson are they like that, they want to be in control of the games and that, and when they're not, they're finding it difficult really, and but I certainly I don't think this game at all. I don't think they're really as dominant as usual. I think I've seen them a lot more dominant. St Johnson, especially August kind of September time, and um, the teams that, as I've said, teams that have won the league, they have dips in form. That they have um times where they will go through declines in performances and that. But you know, for speaking about somebody that's on the outside, it's also on teams that are round about them to capitalise on that. And teams that are it's also um on teams to put the pressure on them, and obviously the weekend, I think it would have breathed a bit of sigh of relief that either us or Rafe didn't win. They'd be pretty happy with that, but obviously not happy that that's another point dropped. I think they drew to Morton as well a couple of weeks ago, if I'm
Aye.
right in saying that. So again, they're not going to drop points at the moment. I mean, but you don't know. They could, and who's to say that the teams can, plug the gap on them? But I think this week certainly was a chance for either us and Rafe to plug a gap, and massive opportunity missed for them, but for teams like us. But I know, from their standpoint, fantastic result on the road for them. A fantastic point for them to get on the road, and I think they're starting to click a wee bit now. So that's very good for them.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's an excellent point to get from Air, and with that, they're now 5 unbeaten. They've got 5 games unbeaten. They've got their first 2 wins in amongst that run. They're sitting a point behind Arbroath, now in fifth. Is there Scott Brown's Ayr United back up and running?
Maybe it could very well be. I would be still slightly concerned if I were an Air fan that Brown might start messing about with his lineup and things like that, and that has been a bit of a stumbling block for them. But maybe he's learned his lesson, and maybe he knows what he needs to do to get the best out of his players. Their squad is good enough. Their squad's good enough to be top 2, top 3, realistically. It's on him to get the most out of them at this stage, and obviously it looks as though he's at the very least learning how to do that.
Aye, because it's like there is, as I did say, it's like they're 5 games unbeaten, and they've got those 2 wins. But those 2 wins, they're against Airdrie and a 10-man Dunfermline. So it's like it is a difficult one.
But sometimes though,
It's a very good result to get away at St Johnstone, but I would say the jury's still out, but it's getting better.
yeah,
It's like they had a terrible start. So
Absolutely.
it's on the up, but it's still definitely questions to be asked.
yeah, yeah. They'll be an interesting team to follow this season. I certainly think they will be top 4 though come the end of the year.
It's like we move on now to the final game of the weekend. It is Dunfermline at home to Queen's Park. Both sides on a losing streak. I mean, Queen's Park have lost 2 in a row, but Dunfermline have lost their last 3. Enzo, you watched this game. How would you?
Yeah,
How
I
would you
was
describe it?
windy. It was windy. I was in attendance at East End Park, and it was a windy day. I mean, ultimately, honestly, I heard some Dunfermline fans suggest that they dominated that game. I really don't see it. I think possession was 56-44 in their favour. They had 4 shots in goal. We had 3 shots in goal. In the first half, they were the better team. I'm certainly not gonna debate that. They had more of the ball in the first half, but they didn't really create too many chances. They hit the bar, but at the same time, Josh Fowler had a shot that was cleared off the line as well. So ultimately, both teams came very, very close to scoring. Second half was a lot more even. Uh, I have some this kind of ties into my wider concerns about our season in general, I suppose, which is that I think we have an all right starting 11, but I think once you start picking up injuries and suspensions and things like that, we might struggle big time. And unfortunately, we did pick up a couple of knocks on Saturday, and even so, I'm actually going to. I'll take you back a wee bit further. So against St Johnstone, Ewan Murray picked up an injury, so he missed the Thistle game, and he was on the bench for the Thistle game, and he's out the squad altogether for the Dunfermline game. And unfortunately, Ewan Murray's been very solid for us at the back. So I'm hoping he's going to be back at some point soon. He's been really, really good for us. And we also had Matty Shields go off with an injury as well. Very, very concerning. Matty Shields, who I didn't expect much from when we signed him from Dumbarton. Even Dumbarton fans were really surprised he got moved to the Championship. I think make the case that he's been our most consistent player so far this season. So hopefully there's nothing long term there, because we've already got Michael Ruth out long term until at least January. We can't afford any more of these guys to be out for a significant period of time. Yeah, so the second half, though, I think it was pretty 50-50. Honestly, if you've watched the highlights, not a whole lot actually happened, to be honest with you. It was a pretty boring game of football. Um, I'm going to put on my very biased hat here and say that I think Chiloka Mullen should have been sent off. He got booked for a dive later on in the second half, but he should actually have been booked for a dive in the. Sorry, was that the first? He got booked for a dive when I think he should already have been booked for a dive. Two really absolute stinkers, really really poor attempts, and I thought he was pretty poor in general. Chris Kane was rubbish. He looked done. He looked totally done. But I thought there were a couple of the Dunfermline boys had decent games. Amadi was fantastic. I think he's been given the captain's armband, or he certainly had been on Saturday. I don't know if that is the first time. And that Abdullah, it was his debut, the guy they signed from the Ghanaian league. He was really, really solid as well at the back. But I think their fans are quite frustrated, and I can understand that that's 4 games in a row where I don't think they've actually scored a goal in that time. Is that right? Which is pretty problematic. And if Zach Rudden's out until December, January time, Chris Kane looks as though he's done. Barney Stewart came on. Obviously, he's on loan from Falkirk. Don't think he was up to all that much, if I'm honest with you. Um, and they've obviously sent Connor Young out on loan to East Kilbride because he wasn't really proven to be up to championship level either. So I know that they've invested relatively heavily in that squad and in the manager, but they just don't have that force up front that's going to get them goals and drag them over the finish line most weeks. Um, Overall, I'm not too disappointed with a draw in the end. Really, I think it is what it is. We're still undefeated away from home. Believe it or not, we haven't lost any away games yet. But at the same time, we have lost 3 home games and only drawn one. So we need to kind of find a balance there a wee bit. Um, but aye, draw for me was a fair result on the day.
It's like as you were saying about Dunfermline, they're now goalless in their last 3. The last goal came against St Johnstone. So only 1 goal since they beat Arbroath 5-0.
Okay, yep.
Um,
So was that a fluke?
that 5-0?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, fair enough then.
Oh,
No
definitely.
question. You didn't have to think about that.
Aye, not much thinking for me for that, but yeah, it's like with Dunfermline. Also, it's like Kyle Benedictus was out. It's like they were missing Kyle Benedictus. I know that for certain. And with him out of the squad, their starting 11, I think, had an average age of 22.5. And it's like the next high. It's like the next one above that. It's by far and away the lowest average age in the league. The next lowest is about 25. It's like on the one hand, it's like you've got to applaud them for having faith in youth, but you have to strike a balance. And it's like they had the opportunity to do that with this investment, and they've just not. They've just really not. And as you say, it's like Chris Kane. It's like they don't have that presence up front. It's like yes, they have invested on it, rumored to be 6 figures, but that was on Zach Rudden, who, granted, he has scored a couple, but he's out injured, and they just don't have anyone else really. And it's like after this game, it's like both sides are now sat where they finished last season, 7th and 8th. It does. It's like we all know about the issues Queens Park have had. They've had a very difficult year just in general. But it's like with Dunfermline, it's like the new owners and it's like the money being spent, all this sort of thing. They had high expectations. It's like they were hoping for the playoffs. It's like, or at least to be in a playoff fight. They look nowhere near it.
No.
I can't see them. I can't see them being anywhere near top 4 come the end of the year. To be honest with you, unless they do some crazy spending in January, I don't think the squad's got it.
no, absolutely not. I think watching looking at the highlights, for your game on Saturday, Enzo, I think while it was a really good point for Queens Park, I think you'd be delighted with that. Coming away from East End Park, getting a draw, but Dunfermline didn't impress me at all, albeit I hit the bar. Charlie Gilmore hit the bar, I think it was, in
Yeah,
the first
was
half. Other than that, they did not impress me at all. And I just took a look at the reaction to the full time tweet when they tweeted at the
yeah.
full time score on Saturday. They're not happy, and I was scrolling down. I've seen probably maybe 4 or 5 people calling for Lennon said. So I think he might be under a bit of pressure. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But I certainly then the consensus from Saturday was saying that they were really, really poor, and that I think the word pish was thrown about a few times for their performance on Saturday. And just saying how poor they were on Saturday, and certainly their expectations this season, especially with how much he invested. They invested money. They invested a lot of money, but they didn't invest it in quality. I don't think at
But
all. And you
remember
know,
that Lennon himself is going to be on a fair whack as well, man. I don't
aye.
know. I don't know how much, but he'll be on a significant wage. I'll be surprised if he's not probably the highest paid manager in this league, maybe even by
Mm-hmm.
quite some distance. So
Uh,
I know.
it's a funny one. I don't know. I don't know where this season goes from here. If I'm honest with you, because I think they're just in a really really weird place, and they've obviously they don't have a game this weekend, which could potentially be. I don't know if that's a good thing for them necessarily. They were meant to be playing against Airdrie on Saturday, but they've got a few under 21 international call ups, so that's been called off. So that's an opportunity potentially squandered because they would have fancied their chances against Airdrie. You would imagine. Then the next game they play is against Wraith on the telly on the following Friday night, and it's like if you say you lose that game, you're kind of struggling depending on how other results go around you.
if
I
we're
mean,
the final nail in the coffin, if we're the final nail in the coffin for Neil Lennon, you've got no idea how
I
happy I
can't
will
see it, man. I can't see it.
be.
I
I
don't
want
think
it to happen so badly. It'll be so funny.
I don't think it'll. I don't think they'll actually get rid of him unless they're in the bottom two come sort of January time or something like that. I don't think they'll be particularly trigger happy with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they're even floating about that or even where they are right now, come then I think Dunfermline fans will be wanting rid of him sooner than that. But I just can't see it happening.
No.
It's like with obviously it's like with the game against Airdrie being cancelled due to international call-ups. It's like if results go in certain ways, it's like it could be ninth going into the derby, and that would be like a massive concern. As mentioned, it's like they had all these expectations, this
Yeah,
investment, and all that. But the thing is, it's like I said this in the pre-season. It's like I did say that Dunfermline have improved on last season, but the floor was so low. It's like they were terrible last season, and it's like have they improved? Yes, because they've proven to be actually capable of scoring goals at points this season. They're back to last season's sort of form, but the thing is, last season that is like this sort of patch was the norm. It's like it was very regular. Like I think they scored 27, 28 goals in all of last season. It's like we're 9 games in and we're sat on 10. So it's like that's it's like if trends continue, that's 40 goals over a season. Which it's like if you're nearly doubling your output, it's pretty good. But as mentioned, it's like they just don't have the quality and depth or whatever. And it's like 2 games in a row getting a sending off. As you were saying, Chilwell Mullins should have been sent off. It's real. It's like they will be fine. It's like they'll stay up. It's like Edry will stay below them, and let's face it, it will probably be Queens Park that finish ninth at this rate.
come back
But
and hold on, come
not
back and
saying that
come back
Dunfermline aren't going to not finish ninth.
come back in 2.5 weeks because
Bubble.
come back in 2.5 weeks and we'll see about that because our next two games are massive. We've got a Broth and Airdrie in our next two games. Those are
Those
those
ones will be massive for them. But
significant set of fixtures. If we don't win both of them, then I will agree with you. But it's a huge opportunity for us. Huge opportunity for us. As I say, we've been decent away from home. So Arbroath away, it's a place that we do typically have a decent record, but obviously very aware that Arbroath they beat us last time we played them, albeit it was 3 pretty howling individual errors. But if we can go there and get a result, or at least not lose, and then beat Airdrie, we'll see. We'll see. It's a long season. I'm not concerned about the league table yet. I'm just not worried about it yet. I'll start worrying about it once we're fully adrift in ninth place. But I can't. I'm not overly concerned yet.
so with Dunfermline, as I did mention, with like the whole possibly being ninth going into the derby, if they lose the derby at East End, alarm bells will start ringing.
Absolutely, yeah.
What you're saying, Kieran, is
Absolutely.
like they're starting. I think that will put it into overdrive
Yeah.
because it's like aside from the last few years, it's like we were terrible at East End Park, and it's like they've been terrible at start, it's vice versa. But it's like we've been a bit better at East End Park the last couple of years, and it's like if they perform like they did in the last derby and like they have in the last few weeks, then real concern for them. And it's like that game against Airdrie. It's like on the one hand that's a week off. It's a week to work in the week to work on the training pitch, all that sort of thing. If there's anyone out with suspensions or injuries, it's like they're gonna come back. They're gonna be ready to go, nice and fit. But that game against Airdrie, it's like we said like every week at this point, Airdrie are terrible. It's like that's a game, a very good opportunity. It's like get 3 points, get a bit of momentum. Just like scoring at least a goal.
Yeah.
So
I just think. I think if you're on the kind of run of form that Dunfermline are on, where the fans are starting to get a wee bit impatient, and everybody else is still playing, that's the key part of it. If everybody else is still playing and you're losing out on ground above you, or potentially could even be overtaken by the sides below you, and you've got on paper the easiest fixture in the league that you should be competing in, I don't think it's good timing at all.
Oh.
no. But alright, so moving on, we go into the table. It's like every team apart from Partick and Ayr have played 9 games. Them two have got 8, and coincidentally, obviously they're games against each other, but they played in the League Cup. So top of the table, St Johnstone, second with 23 points. Second, Thistle with 17. Reef third on 14. Arbroath fourth on 12. Ayr fifth on 11. Morton back in 6th on 10, Dunfermline in 7th on 9, Queen's Park in 8th on 8, Ross County still 9th but on 7, and then Airdrie bottom with 3. I do like how it goes down like 1 point all the way from Arbroath down to Ross County. But I didn't know that before. But next week's fixtures, as mentioned, the only game is Dunfermline and Airdrie. That's been called off due to the internationals. But we have St Johnstone against Ross County. This will be a big one for both sides. Ross County looking to try and continue from their win against us. St Johnstone, who knows? Maybe they'll turn up. As you said, Enzo, yourselves, Queen's Park, who's away to Arbroath. What are your expectations going into that?
I think I mean, I'm not going to say we need to win, but we certainly need not to lose that game. But I mean, we need to start winning games. We need to start winning. We're in a position where I think we should have potentially 3 to 5 points more because we've chucked away. We've managed to turn some what I think should have been victories into draws, and that's frustrating. So we need to start doing a little bit better. Need to start finding goals from places other than just Josh Fowler in the squad as well, especially the midfield. I think. But as I say, I'm still not overly worried about how this season's going to go for us. To be honest with you, I think we've got quite a lot of really young players, and this is an opportunity for us to go and pick up another win.
It's like it's like the other ones, Reef against Ayr. As mentioned, Ayr 5 unbeaten, but it's like they've only won 2 of those, and that was Airdrie and Dunfermline.
Yeah.
I think we've got a pretty good. we've got a pretty good record against Ayr at Starks. It's just at Somerset that would be terrible, but it's like we got a win at Somerset. So I think that'll be an interesting one. Or it could just finish 0-0, which, yeah, I've just got a feeling this one will be a draw, to be honest. And then the only other fixture is Morton at home to Thistle. Now, this will be fun if Aidan comes back on for it. Kieran, how are you feeling going into that one?
Heading into it, I mean, Capital, I think it's one of the, if not the toughest place to go to in the Championship. I think I can never really predict. Going down to Capital, get a decent-ish record over there. Over in Capital, the last time we played them, obviously we beat them 1-0. But I mean, I think I would like to get back to winning ways. Can I just taking one game at a time, as I said, and keep plugging away, plugging away. Would I take a point going for Capo? I think naturally, as well as that, if you offered me it, depending on how we got to the point, maybe I would take it. But I think ideally we just need to get back to winning ways, and see what happens. But fingers crossed. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully we get the win, and hopefully it's a dodgy penalty. So Aiden's raging again.
It would be a right laugh, just if Thistle win through a dodgy penalty, it's like Aidan will come on and he'll be fuming because it would be like the fourth and 10. Where
What would he? I mean, would it be funnier if that happened, or if Morton got like another ridiculous goal chopped off? Would you think would make him angrier?
Can I answer both?
Potentially, yeah. Just combine it all into one horrible experience.
It would make the next episode generational head loss. It's just like finally something on par with when we lost away at Livingston, and I threatened my own life. But so if you do want to find out whether or not Aidan threatens his own life because of referee decisions, join us next week, where of course we will cover those games. And yeah, that's us for this week. So bye for now.
Cheers.